Hey there, we're going to go ahead and get started. Materials are not available, the message.
Okay, I'll take care of it. You got it.
Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate everybody joining us. What a whirlwind day this has been. Whew. I feel like I've been doing nothing but running meeting to meeting this morning. Anyways, I'd like to start out, y'all should have your agenda in the meeting as an attachment. Also, I think it was emailed yesterday. And at this point, the agenda that was a tentative agenda, I think, is our final. I don't think we've added anything extra since yesterday. The first thing I'd like to get out of the way is to introduce one of our new staff persons. Y'all know that Casey left us a month or so ago. And in the room in the very back in the center, you can see Diane. Wave, Diane. Yep. Diane joined us here a couple weeks ago, and she is our new cost analysis manager, and just wanted you to know her name, Diane Welsh, Welsch, and so you'll get to know her over the coming months as she participates in a variety of training sessions and so forth, and we'll be handing out a new contacts list as well for our folks here, so you'll have our number and all. Also, if you need to chat any questions, we do have laptops in the room. We'll give you a chance to chat your questions, and if it's long and you feel like actually speaking instead of typing it, then we'll give you an opportunity for that as well. The first thing on the agenda is something we're very excited about. It was really kind of a brainchild of Debbie's. To develop this finance director and auditor resource repository. It is on our website. You can go out and find it. I've put in the handouts a screenshot or a PDF of what was on there this morning. We are continuing to add resources. I use it all the time, actually. Ever since we've created it, I've probably been there 50 times. To easily get to things that were previously scattered all over the place. So please check that out. Make sure you share that with your auditors and let them know that's available, because I think they'll find it very handy as well. And what we would like to do is, if you go out there and there's not something that you want that you think would be helpful, maybe it's something that's on business tools that you're like, it'd be easier if I didn't have to log in to get it. Or if there's just something else that you can think of that we can add, we can continually enhance and add to that based on your recommendations. So we look forward to continuing to keep that updated and helpful for you all, and hearing some feedback. I'm going to let Kareem step in here. He is our security director, and he's going to update us real briefly on securing the human security training. So go ahead, Kareem, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Chris. As many of you are aware, the most recent platform that we were using, Securing the Human from SANS, expired at the end of last month. My office, in coordination with some of our other people here at Central Office, have started the procurement process for a new environment. It will still be a SANS product, however, it will be on a different platform. I know there are some in the provider network that were not too happy with the previous SANS platform, and I brought that to the attention of the SANS vendor and what we were experiencing. They have assured me that the new platform shouldn't have those same issues, but of course we won't know until we actually start using it. So fingers crossed on that. As I mentioned, that process has begun, and we should be hearing some more details on the tool in the next few weeks, as far as my team being able to look at the new tool and learning how to use the tool so that we can better serve you guys and allow you the same opportunity to use it as we did before. There will be a little training session for that once we learn how it actually operates. So more information should be forthcoming to the executive directors and those training manager points of contact that we have on file.
Yeah, and just for those on the call, just know that we were told this was owned by Department of Administration. We actually did not own this product. and we were forced to make this change, and I want to commend Kareem and his team and the IT folks for really trying to keep the disruption at a minimal level with all that's going on. They did look at other products, but ultimately landed on maintaining this product. So thank you, Kareem, for all your efforts. And I guess anyone on the call, if you have any questions in the meantime, I guess right now, if they try and go and access the old tool, they're not going to be able to get in it, right, Kareem?
Right. They'll be able to access it, but they won't have any training. They'll see the big red letters that the license has expired. Um, and it's, I guess another thing that we need to, I guess, convey is some of the people that we had as training contacts weren't aware that the tool was going away. So some of the information didn't seep down through the hierarchy in some of the areas. So once we give it to the executive directors and who we do have as points of contacts, it's a good idea to make sure it goes through the entire organization so they are aware. But
Okay,
other than that,
anyone have any questions for Kareem? You can unmute yourself or type in the chat before we let him go. He's got an interview to get to. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. Thank you, Kareem.
all right, no problem. Have a good one.
All right. Next, we're going to hear from Deborah Leopard. Deborah, are you online?
Yes, I am.
All right, take it away.
All right. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to update you briefly on the status of all the contracts for fiscal 21 and the end of fiscal 20. Most of the contracts have gone out. There's a few that are still in the works. Those should go out in the next couple of days, but there's just a few that still haven't gone out. Most of them are out there. We are using DocuSign this year for everything, so all the contracts should have come to you in your email. Chris and I are on top of signing, so we've signed everything we've gotten back at this point, and there's still about 100 documents sitting out there that need to be signed by providers. So check your email. Make sure that you think you've gotten everything. If you think you're missing something, you don't see something, just email me at the contracts email and I'll look into it for you. We're still having a few issues with people with DocuSign, so if you're having trouble with it, you can either email me or on Business Tools, there's a folder called Contract Information and there's DocuSign instructions in there. So look that up, and if you still are having problems, please just email me or give me a call, and we can kind of walk through it together to make sure these get back. I'm already working on Amendment 1, which will be your true-up for your July consumers. What you got in your original contract was as of the beginning of May. We're working on those. I don't know exactly when those are coming out, but I am working on it, as well as kind of wrapping up the final 2020 amendments. Working on Band Bs and Is right now, and some final residential stuff. I think that's all. I just wanted you to know where we stand, and once again, if you have any questions or you have concerns, just let us know, and I'll get back to you pretty quickly.
All right, we've got 2 questions. We're going to let Jerry ask his question over voice, and then we have a typed-in message question.
Okay.
Jerry? You said you unmuted him?
On our end, he must have to unmute his own.
Jerry, you might need to unmute on your side. In the meantime, we did have a question. Deborah, if they don't sign within a certain number of days, what happens with the contracts? Do they go away, or how does that work?
They don't go away. They'll if it's a long time, like a month, if they're still sitting out there, I'll get a notification that says it's about to expire, and we'll have to send it to you again. But just a week or two, it's not going to make that big of a difference. If it does expire, then I'll reissue them to you.
Okay. Jerry? Do you want to type your message in, Jerry, or?
Try now, Jerry. I unmuted everybody.
Try now, Jerry.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Just a real quick question. One of the contracts that I know you guys have made some changes on is related to the properties that we some of us own that will where the maintenance is going to be taken over by the you guys. Which is fine with us, but is there going to be some kind of an agreement developed for that? Because one of the things, since we're the property owners, we're the ones who are going to get the phone calls if maintenance is not really done at the level that might be. So is there a way that there's an agreement of understanding of how the relationship is going to be done moving forward? Because so far we've got everything by word of mouth. Just want to make sure that there's some kind of documentation that describes the relationship moving forward.
I said, y'all know you.
We can develop something, Jerry. I know Debbie's been in touch with all three providers, trying to work through the logistics and making sure there's clear understanding of how everything is to work with in regards to those three. If we can have an offline conversation, I know she's been talking to Robert, and you know, if we need to have something in writing, we certainly can do so.
Yeah, the only reason I'm bringing that up is because, you know, again, even the relationship that we had before wasn't always clear. So if we're going to make the changes, you know, that's fine. I just want to make sure that, you know, maybe 5 years from now, if not all of us are here, we know what that relationship is. So if we can do something offline, that would be great. Thank you.
All right. And then the question was, do you want actual witnesses to sign, or does it really matter?
It doesn't matter, just anybody from your board that can witness.
Well, what we're talking about doing, Dawn, is eliminating the witness requirement. It's kind of stupid in an electronic environment. As I told Deborah, we just had this conversation, I guess, late last week, or maybe it was yesterday, Deborah. I can't even remember. My days are running together.
I think it might have been yesterday.
You know, hey, can you come watch me hit electronic sign on this and witness it? You know, it's kind of run its course. So we're actually going to get with our attorney here on our staff and make sure there's not some legal reason that we need witnesses. But that actually is going to go away like the way of the dinosaur probably in the future. It's a great question. Can you expand on the C payments under contracts?
I think she means number. It was letter C, payments under contracts.
Well, if you know how to, I didn't know you could see these questions. Can you go ahead and take them then? 'Cause there's two of them there.
This C, the funds received by contract are not expended at the end of the contract period, must be refunded to DDSN. Those are on all the contracts. Chris was really trying to be consistent with language this time, and in this particular case, the EI providers and the case management providers are fee for service. So we've had a few questions about this, asking why that's included on their contract, because they're fee for service.
That was probably an oversight, but I thought we redid the whole QPL. I guess again, let's go offline on that, Deborah. I don't want to hold up everybody for this, but you seem to know exactly what she's asking about, right?
Yes, I do. I've talked to her and several other providers just today about this.
Okay.
So we can talk.
We'll get you an answer, and that was probably an oversight on our part. How about the next one, Deborah?
The deeds for properties, properties that you own, or are you talking about the lease agreements? I'm not real sure on that one.
Elizabeth, are you skipping ahead to item 21, which is regarding state-owned facilities operated by providers?
Yeah, and I guess I think I thought that's what Jerry was asking, so I was following up with him.
No, they own the autism homes that we operate.
Okay, got you. All right, so you can wait.
Okay.
Thanks.
I guess that's Zenobia. Yeah, we started the meeting. I don't know. Everybody else can hear us, so you've got something on your side going on, I guess. All right, well, that appears to be all the contract questions. Deborah, will you make sure that we get an answer to those two that we tabled?
Yes, absolutely. I'll make a note.
Thank you. All right. Also, the DocuSign instructions, made a note that would be fabulous to put on the finance resources page. It's stupid that it has to be behind a firewall on business tools. So we'll get that moved to the page so that it's easier to access the DocuSign instructions. Item number 4, we had asked providers, and I want to thank you all very, very, very much for cooperating with this. It was extremely beneficial to see what was happening real time. We asked you all to start entering your day program attendance weekly so that we could run reports. I think it was every Monday afternoon or something, or Tuesday. And a lot of y'all are still doing that. Some have kind of fallen off, but we really don't feel like we need that hot of data anymore. We can work off the final desal reports now because we kind of have a really good feel of what's going on out there. So you all can discontinue entering that weekly. I would caution you though, it may be something you want to retain as a practice. As we move fee for service, you might want these reports or have access to that information to project revenue. Now at this time, I don't know that we have a report set up where you can actually query that right now, but that is something we can probably open up for providers if they feel like it would be helpful. But as far as DDSN needing that information now on a weekly basis, you guys can discontinue that if you would like. I'm going to stop here and see if anybody has any questions. All right. Do you understand that comment from Lois?
Yes.
It's going to be funny or...
She's making fun of you because you're talking to Zenobia when she couldn't hear what was going on.
Oh.
It's like saying, let me know if you can't hear me.
Hey, but somebody in the room next to her could. Okay, family support contracts for fiscal year 2021. We are, as we stated in a memo that went out, we don't have access to summer supports monies anymore, but we do understand how important those funds are in those programs for families, especially right now. So we're trying to continue to identify revenue sources for this. Going forward, we've obviously identified funds for this year, and the way that we're rolling that out, for those of y'all that have family support funds awarded to you, you can and have always been able to, from my understanding, use those for summer supports. But we also gave folks an opportunity to ask for supplemental monies if they needed more than what they already had. We were able to fully fund all the requests that were turned in. And so what we're going to do, we split instead of having an award that crosses years, which is a real pain in cost settling and accounting and auditing, we're going to split the funding into the 2 years. And so for this summer, you will see funds in your 2020 contract that we issued, that now that year's over, and your 2021 contract. Now, as we approach next summer, we will, if we can find funds again, amend fiscal year 2021's family award contract, family supports award, and fiscal year 2022, similar to how we did this year. That is assuming that we have funds available. For those that don't have family support awards available locally, you can apply through our state pool. We did add some additional dollars in there for summer supports. Now, we did reallocate family supports this year. What we found, we did a 5-year look back, and the providers that have paybacks every single year, year after year after year after year. We had providers that were fully expending their funds year after year, and what we wanted to do was reallocate those funds based on the method that has always been used, which was non-waiver individuals served. So we got that data for every provider and split the pot statewide, and then for those providers that after that computation was done, If we were allocating them funds that were clear that they weren't going to be able to spend or haven't historically, we threw them back in and reallocated those to the remaining providers. And so a lot of y'all should have seen a significant increase in your family supports, and then others a drop. If your family supports dropped and you're concerned about it, just email us and we will communicate with you about it. We're not trying to take money from you that you need. Again, looking at 5 years, I drew a baseline and I identified, I left a lot of meat on the bones when we cut it. We didn't, let's say for example, you got $30,000 and habitually or routinely paid back 20 of it. We didn't cut your award to 10, we cut your award maybe to 15 because we didn't want to take you down to the brass tacks on that. So if you feel like that's an issue, communicate that to us. You can email the contracts email address or me directly, and we'll see what we can do about that. So are there any questions on family support? Ralph, what would be helpful?
I think he's talking about the report for unsubmitted DSAL.
Oh, okay.
That's when you put that comment in. That's what.
Okay. Did you document that? Okay. Yeah, Ben's kind of the owner of that, and we'll talk to Lori and see what we can do there. All right. The family supports rollover practice that DSN started several years ago. It is a settlement nightmare. I mean, you can ask Debbie. She and I have been wrestling with this. You've got funds that, for those of y'all that don't know what I'm talking about, the fiscal year ends June 30. There was an amendment done that allowed you to spend those same funds in July and August, which allowed you to carry those funds forward, which then year after year, as that practice occurred, you had a sliding 12-month, really 14-month period that you had to address. So if you had expenses in a given year, we had to make sure they didn't get double counted. We had to make sure revenues were properly recorded. We've got some folks that recorded that family support carryover in the audit as an individual department. Others combined it into their existing family support for the current year. It's a hot mess. We've literally spent probably 200 hours on family support settlements, only because of that one issue. And so we just don't see the benefit there, and so we discontinued that practice when I got here last year, and we don't intend to continue it. So just wanted y'all to know, because some folks have continued to ask us, not many, but folks have asked, are we going to do that amendment? And no, we're not, because it's really a mess. It causes a real problem here. The next item, and I'll see if anybody has anything to chat in the meantime, but I'll let Debbie talk about state-funded follow-along. A lot of you on the call have never heard of this before. I never heard of it before I got here. It's basically job coach services that are state-funded, and it was an oversight on our part last year when we converted Band A's, and so this year we're taking that fee-for-service, and Debbie's going to talk a little bit about that process.
Good afternoon. State-funded follow-along, effective July 1st, is going to go fee-for-service. You will be getting some information from me as soon as I get it all typed up on exactly what's going to happen. But just so that you're aware, this program is going to be paid similar to the way that we're currently handling state-funded community supports. Therefore, what will happen is there will be an invoice that will be out on the DDSN portal for you to pull. You'll go into R2D2, logs, DSAL and ResLog, DSAL, and then there's going to be a DSAL service totals invoice for state-funded consumers, which is where you are currently pulling, for those of you that do have it, the invoice for state-funded consumers. The only difference that's going to be is that when that menu pops up, there used to just be 4 lines. Now there's going to be 5, because there's going to be an added line on the bottom that says type. When you click on the arrow on that, it's going to give you 2 options. Do you want your state-funded community support invoice, or do you want your state-funded follow-along? The invoice that comes out is going to be similar to the other invoice, And what you'll end up doing is the same thing that you are currently doing with the community supports invoice as far as that goes. You review it, you sign it, you send it through RBC. We're asking that all your invoices be submitted to us through RBC, which is located on the portal. For anybody that's currently mailing those invoices in and so forth, have access to RBC, contact me. We'll make sure that you can get access. It's definitely easier. They can't get lost. You get confirmation back from the portal that states that it was submitted and accepted. So we strongly suggest that you do that. We have about 13 providers that currently are getting state-funded follow-along. I can't remember how many. Do you remember how many, Carol? It was for
54.
How many?
13 and 54.
54. Yeah, 54 consumers. So it's not a large number of you. But in any event, if you have any questions at all, I'm going to send out a little cheat sheet thing probably tomorrow, I'm hoping, to those providers that currently do have the state.
Will RBC have its own menu item to submit that under? Will they drop down and select
Although
state-funded follow-along?
although RBC has folders for various different services, it really doesn't matter which folder you choose, just as long as you choose a folder for it to upload to, because we're going to print it and we're going to be looking at the actual document to deciding where we're paying it from. So even though we have multiple folders out there,
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I thought we were going to have IT add one.
And I have it on my list. I haven't addressed it yet. There is a spot when you go out there to RBC, your state-funded community supports, there is a line item out there under RBC that says state-funded community supports. I'll work with IT and get them to add one that says state-funded follow.
It could be slash. Like,
Yeah, or you're right. We can do them both on the same.
But in the meantime, Carol was saying basically, as long as you put it in there, we're going to get it. So.
yeah, just choose a folder, because you can put a Haskell document in a respite folder, but
Okay.
we will see the difference.
So it shouldn't be that difficult. It's a process you're all familiar with. It's just a little expansion and to pull this in that again should have been done last year. Anyone have any questions on that? Okay. Debbie's going to talk about private vehicle mods and environmental mods.
Right. It's kind of a combination of what you have there for 8 and for 11. I can't really separate it. The submission of assistive tech, environmental, and private vehicle modifications for all 3 of the waivers will be changing. The financial directors are no longer going to be actually doing the submission of the modification, because it really, in reality, isn't going to affect the finance directors like it's going to affect the case managers. We've created a generic form, and the good thing is that where you used to have a form for IDRD, CSW, Haskell for environmental, private vehicle, and assistive tech, you're going to have just one. There's only one form. You have check boxes in it. Very simple. Has the same exact information as the other one has. I think that case managers are going to be much happier having one versus multiple. All modifications will be handled by case management and the case management agencies.
I want to preface this. We are not rolling this out today. She is giving you some preliminary information on what's coming. Ben and I and some others, Lori and the Haskell division, we all have to work out the logistics. So please don't change anything right now until you get more communication from us. She's just giving you background data on where we're headed. Correct, Debbie?
That's correct.
Okay.
By the end of the week, I'll have the universal form that's used for all 3 waivers. And send that out along with an instruction and procedure sheet. the boards will no longer be asked to pay and to submit the modifications to DDSN for reimbursement. The more we talked about this, the more we realized that there were so many hands in the pot that it really was not necessary to go through all these steps. So this is what we're looking at doing. The case manager will continue to handle everything the way they've handled it in the past, with the exception that they're not going to be sending the information to their finance person for a check to be cut to the vendor, and then hence what you're currently doing. And then the finance director has to make copies of all this stuff, and they send it to DDSN for DDSN to reimburse them for it. We're cutting out that piece. So what will end up happening is that the case manager will submit the form along with the same documentation that they had to submit in the past. Nothing really anymore. And they're going to submit it directly to DDSN. We will pay the vendor directly on behalf of the consumer and behalf of the board. There's going to be just a couple of really minor small changes with that. And one of them is that we ask if in fact the vendor that you're dealing with may have not dealt with the state in the past, we will require a W-9. But if they have a state vendor ID and they have been working with the state in the past, we don't have to have one. In order for DDSN to create a vendor to pay, we're required to have a W-9, and they won't even begin to create a vendor for us without one. Again, this is all stuff that we've talked about. Ben and me and Lori and everybody and their brother has met on this multiple times already. So I really, the more and more I thought about it, and initially being that I was from a board, initially I was like, it's working the way it is right now. In reality, a lot of it is not working very well from our standpoint. And I'm just going to throw this out there, which isn't a part of this. I sent out probably 15 emails last week regarding CSW modifications that we had not received any data on, or that I could not find that we had received any data on. I have hence received about $90,000 back in documentation that we can now bill Medicaid, that had I not sent out these emails, it would have been lost. By us paying by DDSN paying directly to the vendor, it's in our hands and it's out of yours. So I think that in the long run for DDSN and for you, it's going to be a lot better. Again, as we roll this out, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be more than willing to answer them for you.
Yeah, and the devil's in the details, so we've been huddling up here trying to work through everything and be as proactive and see the whole field, if you will. And I think we're fairly close, Ben, right? I mean,
yeah,
there's some
logistics like changing the therapy authorization so that invoices get sent to the right places and things like that, and then we get our internal process for that once it comes in down, and then training case managers and all that on it. But it's definitely going to be cutting out a whole chunk of this process to make it a little more streamlined.
And I think that's a win for the provider network. I think it, helps save y'all some energy, and y'all can expend that in another area. I'm sure you have plenty of things you can use that time for. Will it coincide with the BNI change? No, we want to do it prior to, just because it's not part of the BNI. While it's part of the budget, it's not in your band. And so we already have a payment process to pay you these things on top of the band, outside the bands. Now CS waiver, we will have to delay that because of band I's probably. But as far as band B's, these assistive techs over 1,000 and the mods that we have to reimburse providers for, we can move that ball without flipping the bands. Band I is something else though that we may have to factor through and see if there's any mechanism to improve that. All right. Year-end processes and deadlines. Debbie, they got a copy of the memo that Kelly sent out.
Yeah.
Just, if you'll just refresh everybody about kind of getting stuff in here so we can close our books.
Just as well, this is what it is that you would have received from Kelly Anderson.
If you can see it.
Yeah.
He's holding up a checklist.
At the beginning of June, okay? It really is important. If any of you have not received this, please let me know. I will sit down and spend all afternoon and do nothing but get this to you because deadlines start tomorrow at 4 p.m. Just before I came down here, I wanted to throw out, right now we have 38 desal logs that are open and 30 not approved, and we've got only 3 open for res logs, but 37 not approved. Emails went out this morning to every board that currently has something out there. One of the things I did notice is that some of the boards, a couple of the ones that were left out there, mainly in the desal area, are areas that nothing is going on. I can't reiterate enough. It is really important that you go out and submit and approve, even if there's nothing on them. There's no ultimate effect other than when we're reviewing everything. We don't know until we actually open up that log and look at it by person to determine whether or not this was something that should have been billed. So I ask you to just, as a finance director, I think you all have access. When we get off this call, just take 2 minutes to go out and look at your boards to see at your houses and desal and res logs, just to see if you've got anything out there that isn't approved. 4 o'clock tomorrow is the deadline. This is year end. It is absolutely crucial. You have no idea what the finance department goes through with the Department of Admin and all those other departments down there for things and so forth that cross years. So I'm pleading with each and every one of you that you make sure that happens. In addition to that, if you look at it, and I'm not going to go line item by line item, there's all of the things that are to do. Many of these items don't affect everybody, but glance at that, and as an ED, if you want to see it and you didn't get it, please send me an email. I will send out the calendar to you so that you can make sure everybody does it. You know, all it takes is one sizable board to not get the things, get the residential or the desal or res log submitted, and you're talking well over $1 million in revenue. Just happened 2 months ago, one board. So I ask, plead, beg.
Yeah, the memo is on our website. If you go under executive memos, you'll find it out there. It's also in the handouts inside this meeting, if you want to look there. All right, outliers.
Okay. Oh, outliers. I say that with a smile because you have absolutely no idea what the stuff that we have done with regards to outliers. I have been working on outliers since I got here. It's been almost a year, and I don't mean to laugh. There is just so much involved, and I asked for this to be put on there because I know as a board, as being a part of a board, in my head it was like DDSN isn't doing anything for me for these outliers. It is a lot, it is far more difficult to be able to make a determination as to who gets what when you have very little money in the pot or no money in the pot. So what I did is I was working with one of my employees, and we started pulling data all over the place. And I'm just going to throw out some estimates just because I want you to understand, and I promise I'll only take a minute. Right now, the current outlier in bench change requests that we have are 98. 27 of them are band request changes to about $504,000. And 18 are just re-justifications. So therefore, there's 43 outliers out there that are pending review. 18 of these outliers gave us documentation and didn't tell us how much money they needed or how much money they were looking for. The current outlier request right now is 2.3 million, and that's all inclusive, including the band changes and so forth. So we have all of this, and I have 4 huge boxes of outlier documentation in my office that I stare at every day. Information on current funding. That was another thing that touched me as I said, okay, let's do some data pulling regarding Band Bs and Os, Is, and so forth, based on 11 months of spending, annualizing it. We took figures out of the budget files and so forth. There are currently 94 outliers right now, and the cost to DDSN is 2.7 million. Of these outliers that we have paid so far this year, 38 people do not even qualify. So in my head, I'm saying, well, and the people that know, I mean, the board, you know whether or not you should be getting that outlier. In my head, and there are some that drastically need an outlier, that my head is shaking. So one of the things that I want to work toward, and with Chris and so forth, is to be able to take the pot that we currently have. If we can find any additional funding to add to it, that's awesome. But be able to actually look at the spend and look at what you're currently getting in funding to see what options we have. Maybe move some of the funds from the boards in which they're currently aren't spending anything. We actually have about a dozen of them that have little to no spend dollars, but they're getting an outlier. And for whatever reason, maybe it just doesn't, they don't need it anymore. This hasn't been touched in years and years. I don't even know. From an Anderson perspective, I don't think that there have been years that we probably haven't even done justification on a couple on the day program ones and so forth. So in any event, I just wanted you to know that it's there staring at me every day. I am working on it in between other things when I can. And that's pretty much it.
Well, so, the outlier process has been broken. It's one of the first things I wanted to look at when I got here, and it's a project that I have failed at miserably and have a host of reasons why, whether they're valid or not. Initially was due to really having no money, which we're in a much better financial position now. And so we are hot on this, and we do want to get this cranked back up. We discussed it with our finance committee at the last meeting. If you want to go watch that recording, we went over in detail the problems with the outlier process as it exists today and some solutions that we've come up with. The outliers that Debbie mentions, these are old, and people that are just submitting things even though we told people not to submit things. So there's no telling what requests are actually out there. We basically put a moratorium, if you will, or a ceasefire on outlier requests. Some people have chosen to ignore that and send them in anyways. But what that means is there are a lot of providers out there that haven't submitted anything because we told them not to. So we have got to do what I called a call for outlier requests or band change requests. So when we crank this back up, it's going to be important. If we get those requests in and they total $7 million and we got $2 million to allocate, how do we decide who gets those $2 million? How do we look at providers that are losing money versus those that are making money? How do we look at those providers and determine if those operating results are due to mismanagement or legitimate spending issues because we're not funding adequately? To be able to tease apart whether a provider is losing money and that loss is due to them having costs they need to contain versus really not getting funding properly from us, we've got to be able to look at that. We can't just say, okay, provider, you're losing money, you get first shot at outliers and band changes. That's not how it's going to work. We're going to force providers to go through fiscal analysis with us. We have successfully turned around 3 boards since I've been here. They're doing very well right now. They implemented our strategies and they're making money every month now. And so we are adept at doing these things, and we can tell with our years of experience whether a provider has areas that they need to cut costs or whether it's really funding situations. So we're not, I know there's an argument out there that, you know, you're penalizing providers that are operating efficiently, but I think there's more to it than that. You know, not all providers are equal. If we're giving you 15% state retirement and you're not in state retirement and you put 1% per year in your 401k plan for your employees, we're giving you 14% of all dollars that you're not even spending in that area. Same with state health plan. If you don't have a health plan, or you know, there are other examples of things that we have to factor. And so the complexity in being fair is our real problem, and trying to ensure that when we look at things, that we can stare providers in the face and explain why provider A versus provider B was funded. And if you look at that Finance Committee presentation we did, Pat calls it a lot box. We want to have a lot box with dollars in it, and it's for outliers, and that's what it's for. So this lot box will be self-perpetuating, self-funded as folks attrit out. And we want to have a waiting, you know, we want folks to know where they are in line. If you submit an outlier request and it's been denied, well, why was I denied? Am I in line, and where am I in line? So we're really trying to make the process a lot better, which is one main reason why it's been bogged down. But once we had no money, it was really kind of like, well, why are we have nothing to put in this, so let's fix our financial situation first, and then we can crank this baby back up. So there are some questions on here. I'm sorry, I got my screen turned down, so I'm saving battery. I couldn't read it. There does need to be a way where there are built-in incentives for getting a person below the threshold. You should still get something for having done a good job, even though the threshold is no longer met, but the costs are still above the band. I can't disagree there, Ralph. We just have to figure out how we're going to do these things. I mean, it's a struggle to figure out the right approach. Most of our outliers are all for costs that are approved for individuals that are way beyond. You're talking about Band Bs, and yeah, those are going to go away. And I know Debbie is looking at Band B outliers right now for not only last year but this year. There may be some adjustments like we did last year for those, favorable and unfavorable. Is that somebody online, or?
I don't know. I'll meet everybody again.
The Band Bs, once we flip those, yes, those outliers will no longer be a factor, which will be nice for everybody. I think the regional reps will be a huge help with acuity. Well, we're actually pulling the regional reps out of the game. We're actually wanting to centralize it so we get a consistent answer here at central office. What may end up happening is once we've done a fiscal review and a programmatic review at this level, we may deploy them for a site visit to see that actual staffing and needs are in place, versus it being a paper shuffle type deal. We have heard since I've been here, we've heard stories of folks going on site and the one-on-ones that supposedly exist aren't existing, and the enhanced staffing that we're supposedly paying for is not in place when the visit's done. So we do see them fulfilling a role, but not being such a decider. We've got to drive consistency through this, which is why probably Mark Morgan here at Central Office will be very, very involved in this, as well as potentially some type of assessment tool as well. Do you have anything to add to this, Pat? I know you're very involved in.
It's a thorny issue.
Okay. All right. You done with your mods discussion? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So hopefully more to come on outliers. It is a hot topic with the Finance and Audit Committee. They want a plan before them, I think, by August. I'm hoping, we'll definitely have something to them by then. What we're doing right now preliminarily is seeing kind of what our current status is so that we can take to them a proposal. The accounting for the day program take back or recoupment that we did last fiscal year, we've had a lot of, well, not a lot, but several folks question how to account for this on your books and your audit. The first thing I'll say is we're not regulating GAAP or generally accepted accounting principles, so to the extent your auditor and you as management feel that there's a way that this needs to be reported on your basic financials, which are the financials in the front of the notes, and your required supplementary information, which are GAAP basis financials, then you knock yourself out as to how you want to report it in those statements. But the supplementary schedules that DDSN requires you to provide, which are in our directive, those are our statements. So we tell you where we want those things to be to help us do our jobs, and it's not a GAAP issue. I dropped in the handouts AUC 725, which is the audit standard related to your auditor's obligation related to supplementary information. If you read that, it's very clear that these schedules are dictated by regulatory bodies most often, and also include non-accounting information in addition to information from your financials. And the only responsibility they have back there is to make sure that you're using the information that they audited in the front schedules to complete the information in the back schedules. There are very, very little audit requirements. That standard outlines them all so you can see them as a client. So some folks have given me pushback on how we want it reported back there. Those, like I said, are our schedules, and we need you to report them the way we need them reported so that we can do our jobs. When folks take liberty back there and to do things on their own, we get a mess. We can't compare things. We can't find things. We can't tease apart numbers. When people start netting things and grossing things up, and everybody does things differently, it makes our job impossible. And Diane will see that more and more as she gets into her new role. So we would appreciate what we want you to do is show this as a non-operating expense in your adult day program in the back schedules. So it'll be down at the bottom. You can see this information in our schedules that we sent out with the directive. The only thing is it says anticipated current year settlements. Probably need to work on that language. It should just say current year settlements, whether they're anticipated or known. But anyways, that's the line item that we would like those reflected in so that we can very easily pull that out. And we appreciate you cooperating with us on that. Again, as it relates to your audit though, if your auditor says no, this needs to be netted out of revenue, I don't agree that should be reported in that manner, that's fine for the GAAP statements. We're not going to argue with that. So, okay. Also, we have discussed this a couple times, but it's worth reiterating because I did get one question in regards to this on our contracts. If you read the contract language, you know that it states that cost reports are due September 30, and folks know that their audits were moved to October 31st. That was not an oversight, that's intentional. We have to have our cost reports to HHS by November 30th, and you all know that we're very far behind on our cost reports, but that's not acceptable. That we intend to be compliant and file these on time. So that gives us 60 days from September to compile all of this data and QA it, whereas if we waited till October, we would only have 30 days, which is not adequate time to do what we need to do with it. So, you know, again, I'm going to lean on my past experience being an auditor for 30 years. And basically what I will say is that virtually in every instance, audited numbers are known early September, mid-September. So audited figures can be used to derive the cost reports without the actual draft of the audit being done yet. Typically the draft of the audit is where the audit gets delayed and bogged down as you work through drafting that document, having the board of directors approve it, the client approve it, the MDA draft it, and so forth. So we feel that audited numbers should be readily available to still meet the September 30 deadline. There is a process that has been in our directive forever, as long as I can remember, where there's a schedule where you explain if the audited financial statements expenses don't match the audited financial statements expenses in the cost report, that you do a little schedule to show any variance. For example, let's say you do your cost report and you report $100,000 in expenses, and then at the last minute your auditor realizes, or you do, that there's another entry that needs to be made, and now your expenses are $108,000. You will explain that entry in your audit, and we will manually adjust your cost report when we receive your audit report. We cannot wait 31 days, you know, to have those numbers solid. There's a process in place for you to report that to us, and we will then amend your cost report internally for that adjustment. We will, this first year I know is going to be a little strange, so we will consider extensions this year for your cost reports. You will, you know, we're going to have, this isn't the last time we're going to be talking about cost reports. So I will get out something official, but basically you will be able to submit to me a request for extension, and we're not going to be overly stingy with those this year because we're in a transitional year. But going forward, we've got to get to where we get the vast majority of our cost reports by September 30th. So we are going to be scheduling a cost report training. We want that to be in person with the social distancing mandate. What we're wanting to do is potentially rent out Brooklyn KC Church or something where we can socially distance and we can get you all in person with your laptops and your files. And we want to set up a workshop hopefully in August. We are checking on pricing and availability right now for that location in particular. And we hope to get something out very soon, but what we want this to do is to be an in-person workshop so that you can actually work on, you know, look at your cost reports and have us help you with questions. We also want to create a guide so that you have something actually to use to prep cost reports from. I do know that DDSN has not done a cost report training in many, many, many years. The last one has been at least 20 years ago that I can remember, and it was not very thorough, and it was not, I don't even remember any handouts or anything from it. So we've got to do a better job. We cannot blame providers if they're turning in cost reports that are not what we need when we have not communicated what we need. So we're going to be working on that. So be on the lookout for an appointment or an invite for that. Can it still? Yes, we can probably still broadcast the cost report training, possibly even record it if you can't attend in person. So that's a good question. All right. We have, Debbie's staff has worked on updating our board finance director list that has been really outdated. We have put it in business tools because we didn't want it on the website for everyone and their mother to be able to obtain that information. So if you go into business tools, I can't remember what folder I told them to put it in. I think it's in general information, if I'm not mistaken. But it should be out there now or soon. But it's not QPL finance folks. It's the old list that we used to have years and years ago where we had each finance director listed for every agency, and some executive directors are on there as well. It really is, the reason it's issued to you is so that you can have contacts, so that if you need to network, call somebody in a neighboring county, that you have their information.
Can I just throw something out?
Yep.
I ask that you go out there and you pull it and print it. It's 4 pages. It's alphabetical by board. Glance at your information. There may be a wrong phone number. There might be a wrong address. There might be a wrong contact. I've already noticed that there's one email address that's incorrect. So just look at it and shoot me an email. Let me know what you want changed on it. And I'll make sure I get it corrected and get it put back out there.
Yeah, we're going to try and maintain it actively. We're going to assign a belly button, as another Pat term. We're going to assign a belly button to it, and somebody will be responsible for maintaining that. And then, if you'll help keep us updated, if you have any turnover, that'd be appreciated. Most of the time, we do know about turnover, so it's probably likely that as long as we're internally keeping it updated, we should be okay. But it can't hurt, for you to let us know.
And it is in the general information folder.
It is? Great. We have our basic finance training that's done quarterly coming up on the 27th of August. We have 34 people registered, I think. I will send that survey link out again, probably here in the next week or two. It's still going to be offered virtually. We can only have 14 people here in this room physically. So we could, if you want to come in person, you need to communicate with us, and we may be allowed to have maybe 5 or 6 people come on site. But basically, it's going to be another virtual basic training. A lot of folks seem to be getting a lot out of this. It's a very standard agenda that doesn't really change unless DSN has changed something. For example, on this training, we haven't talked about state-funded follow-along billing before, but since we converted, we've got to add it. So that's an example of the types of changes that are made. Same with like the SANS training. When we go over that, Kareem would go over the new SANS training, not the old one. But the topics are static. You're free to attend as many times as you'd like. A lot of folks are sending programmatic folks, AP people, HR folks, payroll folks, procurement, maintenance folks might want to come because there's some stuff on procurement and maintenance in it. So anyways, August 27th, and we will be getting the survey out for other people to have an opportunity to sign up. Again, that's every single quarter we do that. This is the first June quarter in that you've had a quarterly report filing requirement to us. Everybody's turning in quarterly information by the end of the month, following the month end for the quarter. So quarter into June 30, those reports are due July 31st. We still do ask that you submit the quarterly documents even though you're going to turn in an audit. We need to know how you're doing way before the end of October. And so we need this information still. And so even though you're going through an audit and we realize we're not going to compare it to your audit and say, well, you reported this and your audit says that. We're not expecting it to be audit quality. Just turn in like you've always turned in for the other quarters for June. And that applies to QPLs as well. We're in the process now that Diane's here going through and identifying. We have very, very, very few QPLs filing. We had several filing that just quit filing that might have done the first quarter and hadn't done any since. So we're going to try and circle back around on the QPLs, but this applies to all providers. Yeah,
Can I just throw out there?
yeah.
If you can't find your link, just let me know and I'll resend it, because
Yeah, I'm
usually
gonna-
every quarter I
I'm
have
gonna
to
put that.
send it.
I'm gonna put that on the financial resources
Good idea.
page,
That's a good idea.
so you'll have your link there. Okay. Your FTE reports are due July 10th. We weren't looking at any raises this year, so we could delay, making those urgent. I think last year they had you turn them in maybe in April or something. It was before I got here they were due. And since there was no dollar direct care staff or anything like that in the budget ask, we could delay that. Don't get accustomed to it being due in July. That is just something we could throw at you this year to give you a little bit more time given everything going on. There is a memo in the handouts in the meeting where we ask for this information, and if you will use the link or the submission process that we asked you to use, that makes it easier on us. We still have folks emailing things to us that we ask to be submitted through Smartsheet or emailed to different individuals instead of our shared mailbox, and so as a result we have stuff still coming in all over the place, and it's kind of like herding cats. So if you would please review that memo. Debbie Wilson is your contact for tech support on that. You can email her directly for those questions, because even if you email the technical support box, she's the one fielding those. You can still email the tech support shared mailbox and she will get them, but also feel free to email her directly because she is fielding the FTE questions. Admin costs for state funded community supports and Haskell waiver are due the request July 15th. There was a memo also in the meeting. Also, I don't think it's on our website. I need to figure out why that didn't get, I don't think it's out there on our memos, but it is in the meeting here. I'm going to add that to make sure that gets added if it's not on there. But make sure you follow the guidelines that we gave you and that you submit those soon so that we can get you an award. We are not doing contract awards anymore. That was just kind of a silly practice to do grants for admin costs. So we are just simply going to send you a payment like we do on a lot of other stuff around here based on that request. It doesn't have to be on letterhead and all that crazy stuff that was required before. I'm trying to put the effort where the effort needs to be, not in silliness. So, there are some additional requirements so that we know what we're approving. Before, I think what was requested was not adequate to really know what you were awarding. So if you will follow that, we would appreciate it. And we will have to look at admin costs for state funded follow along as well. That'll be added for the year we're in. That'll have to be a process for that program if there's any other services besides support employment, which I don't think there are, but if there are, because I'm really not very familiar with that program at all. Deborah, you can comment if you're still online and know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I'm still here. There can possibly be a few other services, but so far nobody's really used them, so mostly it's the supported employment.
Okay. All right, but that process will be combined into here with the others. If you need guidance on that as well, you can email the tech support box and somebody will reach out to you to give you assistance there if you're unfamiliar with how to do that. The band BNI, there really is no update. Our team, we're meeting again, I think tomorrow, Ben, is on our calendar, pretty sure. This national code transition and some other crazy projects going around here got most of my team pulled into other directions, and I know Carol has been pulled into different directions, and so we're getting back together tomorrow to re-energize the team now that we got through some of these projects. We're still targeting 10/1 as the conversion date. Just know that we're not going to do this without doing a provider level impact statement analysis. So we are going to ensure that we look at every single provider, how it impacts each provider, make sure we understand, we've got to look at rates. We got to look at the day program rate. We got to look at the residential rate. We got to look at a variety of things as we roll this out. Capitated funding by nature, by design, allows you to move funds around where you need them, and a lot of boards have done that with their Band B and I funding, those that aren't upside down on those. And so we've got to look at those things and make sure that we don't destabilize the system as we convert. Pat, you got anything to say in regards to any of that?
Nope.
Okay. All right. But we are going to be sending out data as soon as we get it. We've needed our IT team to pull some data for us, and they've been covered up with some other projects. The state facilities directive, this is what Elizabeth was asking about earlier, and we might have to circle back around to your question, Liz, because I can't remember what you asked if I don't answer it. But the policy committee recommended to the commission, and the commission approved a revision to 30005 DD, which is the directive related to financial responsibilities for managing and paying for repairs and maintenance and upkeep and licensing and so forth for facilities we own that providers operate. In a nutshell, the entire fiscal responsibility has been shifted to providers. We are going to maintain a few small things. We're hoping to get a memo out. I don't know if Pat approved it this morning. He was at Witten Center yesterday, and I drafted a memo, and it's sitting for him to approve that. But we intend to get a memo out to explain how this transition will occur. Basically, since we still own the facilities, we will have to continue insuring them, and we will be billing you for insurance premiums with supporting details. We will also maintain the termite bonds here and not bill you for those at this time. Once those properties are deeded, we'll have to cross that bridge at that time, because I know a lot of providers don't carry termite bonds on their facilities, and even ours, we only have like 4 or 5 of those 60 that have termite bonds on them. So very, very inconsistent, very unfair, to try and put that on anybody else. So we're going to maintain those for now and figure out what we're going to do with those once we actually deed the properties over. We are still pursuing the deeding of the properties. We've got approval just about from everybody to make it happen. We just have not pulled the trigger on it for a variety of reasons. I don't know if there'll be any funding available to send to providers. It was in our budget ask, but it got nixed because of the continuing resolution that we're under. We will have to revisit whether the commission would consider any kind of funding to help with deferred maintenance items. If you have questions on that, I'm not going to be able to answer you because I have no idea. It has not been broached with them, but we do need to broach that subject and intend to do so. One major issue is if you have facilities that have room and board, we are not going to make you wait until your audit is issued to compute your room and board. I know DSN in the past has not allowed you to, despite it being in the directive, in my opinion, has not allowed you to utilize a room and board calculation with estimates. They said it had to tie to the audit, even if it was a brand new home or an expansion of a home or anything. I don't subscribe to that, so we will permit boards to resubmit their room and board for CRCFs and CTH2s if one of these facilities are state-owned and you have additional costs that you will be incurring as a result. You look like you have a comment or a question, Debbie.
No, I'm not. No.
Okay, so we will get more guidance out on that as well, but basically we have to have a process where you'll take your room and board calculation utilizing existing historical cost and somehow crosswalk it as to what expenses you're estimating that will be new for you. And you may need some history from us as well on that. We may be able to pull some kind of data to help you. My recommendation is really to look at your facilities that are similar and derive some kind of estimate like you were opening a new house. But anyways, we don't want to make you wait to adjust your room and board for that. Will we know the insurance? Susan wants to know when they'll know the insurance costs for.
Getting the data from.
You want to go ahead and.
Soon, within the next week, I'm hoping. I had to reach out to the state accident fund.
No, insurance reserve fund.
Insurance reserve fund to get copies of the policy. And as soon as I have that, I plan on sending out an email or a memo to each one of the finance directors, making them aware of what, as of right, cost is.
Pat, anything? Okay. All right.
Do you want to circle back? There was an earlier question about this topic.
Yeah, what did she ask?
Asked me if you were going to do something with the deeds on the county level.
Yeah, Liz, can you I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, but I don't know that I understood your question either. As far as.
Will you be recording these at the county level?
Will we record them at the county level? Are you talking about deeding them? Elizabeth, I think that was you that asked that question. You're asking about the deed? Yeah, we will work on that. I don't know if we're going to get that done early part of this year. Sorry about that. Or latter part of this year, but I do think it's on our agenda to tackle this in the fiscal year we're in.
Yeah, I think everybody, to include people down at the General Assembly, have agreed the intent to do it. It's just working out the mechanics of making it happen.
Yeah, we had to board, and because one of the things we had to work with the Department of Admin, we're basically disposing of a state asset, and they wanted 50% of the fair market value of every building paid to them, basically, because that's what they're losing by transitioning these over. Right now, if we sell a state-owned facility, we have to pay the state half of the net proceeds, and we get the other half. The half we get is then put into our capital fund that we use to do housing trust fund match and other facility type things. So basically, we had to convince them to walk away from millions of dollars in real estate that they would potentially recover. So, but we've got that approval as well, is my understanding. All right. Okay. All right. Provider Relief Fund. Pat's in the room. I'm going to speak real quick. Do you want to take it entirely, or do you want me to take a whack at it and you supplement?
You are like on fire, so you keep on rolling.
Okay. So
back you up.
First of all, there are so many different pots of funds out there. We are not holding ourselves out as experts in regards to any of them. It really comes down to each individual entity knowing their own situation, their own losses, their own cost increases, where they are with the funds that we provide. Are you still making money right now with the funding we're giving you? In which case it's going to be real hard to state that you're not already getting paid for those dollars. Did you get a PPP? Did you get a EIDL? What other funding sources do you have? What are your expense patterns and so forth? So we really are in a bind as far as advising you. We really think that providers need to educate themselves and really know their numbers and make sure they understand where these dollars are coming from. This Provider Relief Fund, for those of y'all that aren't aware of it, it's $15 billion nationally that is being distributed through a portal. You need to basically just log into the portal with your tax ID number and provide some information. Elizabeth, I might give you a chance to, if we can figure out how to unmute you in a minute, because I know you're actually going through it. You might want to, in a little bit, kind of let us know how that process looked on your side. But we recommend that you look at this. You just put your tax ID number in. Most providers should be registered with HHS because you bill BabyNet. For those of y'all that don't bill BabyNet, or for whatever reason Medicaid doesn't know about you, there'll be a manual process. Pat's memo asks that you email him and let him know if he needed to get you in the system, basically, so that when you register or try applying, that it's not like, whoa, who are you?
The key point is the deadline is July 20th.
July 20th.
And so it's imperative, if you're interested in this, to get to the portal, and the step one is to put your tax ID in there. And when they accept that, that validates you as a Medicaid provider, and then you can fill out the forms. But don't wait until the 18th to do that, because if you get locked out, we only have 2 days to fix it. So please, at the end of this meeting, if you're thinking about applying, do that first step. Nobody has contacted me, so I get the appearance that providers are getting on 100% of the time, but there's always exception.
So, it's a minimum of 2% of your gross revenues for one of the last 3 years, 17, 18, or 19. It could be more than 2% depending on how much the requests tally. I mean, the way I'm interpreting it is if they get $10 billion worth of applications, you could get more than 2% back. So the way I look at this, and again, don't hold me to this because, again, I'm not familiar with every individual provider's situation, but if in my situation and where I'm standing and what I know about what's going on, I would at least apply for the funds. You have 90 days to figure out whether you're going to accept them or not. So that's 3 months to kind of let the rules trickle out and us to learn and figure out whether you're going to have expenses or not, lost revenue or not, whether you really want to accept those. If you deny them in 90 days, you just return them. Or you don't get it at all. I can't remember if you return them or you just don't get paid. I can't remember if they wait 90 days to give you the money or not. But anyways, to me, it can't hurt to apply for them. The key is just if you do get these funds and you do accept them, to ensure that you're not double, triple counting your expenses. The expenses need to be over and above what DSN funds, or you will be double counting your expenses. So with that being said, I didn't know if Liz, if you wanted to comment, or if I'm putting you on the spot. If you don't want to, that's fine. But can you speak, or do you care to speak about your experience?
I can. And I guess the question you ended that last comment with is one of the questions a lot of people have had, whether it was considered, were we paid for it already? And when I attended some of the seminars before the HHS seminar, it was clearly that providers are eligible for 2% of their gross revenue, and the application is collecting a lot of data points, but it's not to be used as a part of their decision making on whether you're eligible or not. So it's I can say that I've spent a whole lot of money and more than 2% of my gross revenue just retrofitting our facilities to fight COVID with very simple. So that's my expense that I can show that we've spent a lot of money on HVAC, air conditioning systems, ionizations, etc. Things to protect people from COVID. And no, you don't have to have had a case to be eligible. You just have to be in the service HCBS sector. But once you do have the TIN number that you submit, you have to be validated, like Pat said, and that usually doesn't take too long. So do it earlier than later, because if you need to be in a special, like Pat said earlier today, he would send a name over if you just need to start now. You also have to collect enough data points, and you have to do FTE reports that they like. They tend to make it a very, very CMS hospital-like application, as if you hire doctors and nurses, and of course we don't. So you have to amend the forms and hope that that satisfies them. So that's all I can say, except that we submitted audited reports as part of our gross financial revenue from the prior year. We don't have to do a gross revenue worksheet because we're not like subsidiaries and private for profits, et cetera. So everybody's different. So it's not easy, but get started soon.
Liz, thank you for that advice. And, the Arc of the Midlands is saying that they're stuck in the system. Have you guys billed Medicaid Direct for anything?
We have an MPI number and we do bill directly, yes.
Right, but does the Arc, Melinda,
Mm.
I'm assuming that's you, it just says AOM.
Sounds like their names need to be given. If they're in case management, they may
You
not
need
have.
to, if you're not direct billing Medicaid for anything, you need to be in touch with Pat. You're one of the ones that he's talking about.
Still try, because,
They're stuck for 15 days, they won't know.
okay, have they been rejected?
It says that they called HHS and it'll be 15 business days before they can tell them.
Call me after the meeting.
Yeah, anyone else,
Anybody
ARC
from
and
jail,
UCP, ARC and UCP are two that have expressed this, and so reach out to Pat. We'll see what we can do to knock those barriers down for you. The other thing I will say is under PPP, you have very limited things you can spend that money on, and it's time limited to 24 weeks. So I would also consider that when you're looking at your expenses. You can't double dip if one of the funds will not pay for a particular type of expense. So I would factor that in, as well as a time period that is in place. As far as the tax return requirement, a lot of you folks are governments and you don't have a 990. You should still be able to apply. Should be, based on the paper application I printed, option to select that you're a political subdivision and you're exempt from filing. Again, if you need assistance on that, let me know and I can help you through that. But the tax return is not a requirement. It is if you have one. But if you don't have a tax return, there are other options. Any other question on provider relief? Samantha, you're with York and Richmond, right?
Yes.
Yeah, if you'll reach out to Pat as well. Sounds like a TPL issue.
Okay.
Oh,
Huh?
is it? Never mind. Does York and Richmond bill directly to Medicaid? I thought they would.
We do.
Yeah, that's true. They do. They bill adult day health care.
Have you been turned down, or have you been, what's your status?
It says it's pending, and it's been pending for a couple of days now, and we can't get past to the next step. And we've called and we can't get answers.
Okay, call me. We'll see what we
Okay.
can do.
Thank you.
All right. So that concludes our agenda. The next meeting's on August 4th at 1 p.m. We will now open the floor to questions, so that if you have a question, you can unmute yourself or chat in the chat box.
If you're on the phone, unmute yourself by hitting *6.
Grady, I don't know why. Okay, Grady is at Union, and he said the 10 was pending for 4 days, but it was finally approved.
Okay.
But that, hanging on when you're dealing with
We're
the
getting close to
deadline.
July 20th. Call me and
Yeah.
we'll push both sides.
Nancy, if we get funds from Medicaid, any expenses paid with these funds would be considered unallowed expenses for cost reporting, correct? Yes, the devil's in the details on this one. Here's the problem. Due to how revenue is recorded under GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, if you have a PPP loan and you spent $700,000 on expenses, you may not know for a year or two whether they are going to forgive you that loan or not. And until you have official notification, you have no revenue to record. That thing stays on your books as a loan in accordance with GAAP that I've read. So we've got a mess on our hands in regards to how cost reports are going to have to be done this year. We're going to have to figure out, do we have providers estimate the amount of expenses they think will not be allowed for Medicaid? That's going to be part of our training. So, I don't have an answer, but the short answer is yes, or it depends. We just need to be sure that if you count an expense over there in one of these other funds, that you don't also put it on your cost report and not offset it with the revenue. And so we're gonna have to dig into that with our training, and that's a good question. Right now, I just really don't have the answer to that. Still trying to work all that out. Jason, given the recent scientific information about the potential, wow, these are big words, Jason. Don't you sound fancy? Given the recent scientific information about the potential transmission of COVID via the air, will DSN consider using retained FMAP or other funds to provide grants for air purification systems or similar products in day and residential buildings? We have looked at that. We have considered it. Again, unfortunately, as you go through and try and come up with how do you implement something, just like Liz said, they've already incurred their ion filter expenses. We have to really, if we roll something out like this, we have to really have it tight and make sure, we consider QPLs. What about folks that have facilities that are rented? What about folks that have 2 people in a facility that are ours and 38 that are Department of Mental Health people? It's just, there are so many nuances to we're boxed in every angle we go, it seems. But yes, Jason, we have looked at that, and I would recommend maybe that you and I and Mary and Pat have a conversation, because that actually was a project we were considering. And after we met on it, there were just so many nuances to it that we had to hit the pause button and say we just got to think about it some more. But yes, that's a great idea, and that's something we would love to see some of that FMAP used for. Anyone else? Well, hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting, and I appreciate everyone for attending. Again, get all your information to us that we mentioned earlier in the meeting, and we'll be glad to give you assistance if you have any problems. But have a great